You should mention the mass arrest in Echo Park of homeless people. It shows how much liberals don't actually care about homeless people. Just oh, liberals, like liberals, do not care about homeless people. That's the whole joke, right? Have you seen the gay anti-homeless rock? You know, they put those rocks in little cubby spaces between the buildings so that homeless people can't sleep there. Then that one company painted it a rainbow, and it's like, woo, we're so progressive, you know? Nobody wants to deal with homeless people. Nobody wants to. And it's a fucking disgrace. Seriously, the fact that this country has homeless people all is unbelievable, okay? From every conceivable angle. I mean, I could talk on and on about economically we benefit more from enfranchising the broadest possible population because that means we have more resources to draw from a labor pool, but we don't need to talk econ, okay? The fact that we live in 2021 in the wealthiest country in the world and about 500,000 people within the borders of this nation sleep outside is ridiculous. It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. Seriously. California has quite a few homeless problems. There are drug problems, of course, and one of the big contributing factors to homelessness is, of course, drug addiction, because drug addiction tears you the fuck up. But another one was because Reagan, back when he was the governor of California, that Reagan, in case you didn't know, he closed all of the mental health institutions. It's a sad fact, but some people can't really take care of themselves that well. And those people probably should have a state-funded facility that takes care of them. Of course, the mental health facilities in California back during the, what would have been, 1970s, 1960s, were not great. You guys ever seen one who flew over the cuckoo's nest? 60s, yeah. You seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? You know, you got the scary nurse and the drugs and the... It's a good movie. You guys haven't seen it? Yeah, Jack Nicholson? Whatever. Anyway, those places were not... They were not great to their people. But we could have improved on that. It's been 60 years since then. We could have done something better than just close them, you know. You know, one of the biggest contributing factors to homelessness, you know, people tend to assume that homeless people are all, like, mentally fucked. And it is true that there are a fair number of homeless people who are mentally incapacitated to the extent that they can't really take care of themselves that well. But I think the vast majority of homeless people are usually people who are placed in incredibly unfortunate circumstances. And the reason for that is because of laws we have the ability to change. The drug war is a big part of that. I think if we actually look, hold on. Homeless population, America over time. Is there a chart? Do we have accurate numbers on that going back? Yeah, there's about 500,000 people in the U.S. experiencing homelessness on a given night. The woke term is houselessness, by the way, because home is where your heart is, but they don't have a house over them. You know how it is. America's homeless population... Oh, well, hold on. Hold on. America's homeless population decreased by nearly 15%, from 647,000 in 2007 to 552,000 in 2018. A 15% decrease in the past, in 11 years, is actually a decent improvement. California has more homeless than any state in the union, with nearly 130,000. That's about a quarter of the national total. You know what happened to the homeless people in Los Angeles? See, if you're homeless, let's brain think, okay? Now, I've never been homeless. There are people here who have been, guaranteed. At least a few people here who have at some point in their life been homeless. Not every homeless person is, like, permanently homeless, you know? Some people are homeless in the sense that they have a rough couple of years or rough couple of months, and that's the best case. But then there are, I guess you would say, lifers, you know, people who, due to addiction or due to other circumstances, it makes it incredibly difficult for them to pull themselves out of that mess. So in California, Los Angeles has a ton of homeless people. How can it not? It's a mega city, millions and millions of people, and they crowd around Hollywood. And there's this one street in Beverly Hills that they were always at, but then when I got older, they kicked the homeless people out, the police, because police love harassing homeless people. Beverly Boulevard. Was it Beverly Drive? It was Beverly something, but there were a lot of homeless people on that street. and Santa Monica and all over, but mostly Hollywood. And most of these people, honest to God, if you gave them a new set of clothes and a shower, very important if you're homeless, by the way, you wouldn't be able to tell them from anyone else. Honest to God, regular people. Seriously. Maybe a little more beleaguered, maybe a few more bags under the eyes, but apart from that, regular ass people. All you need is just a little swap in who makes X an hour and who makes 0 an hour. You know, that's it. Get a job, get a roof, build it from there. And of course, that's not the case for all of them. Some of them need more substantial care. But anyway, one of the policies in California, this isn't really a policy, but this happens nonetheless, is you bus homeless people out. This has been done in a number of ways, but the general practice is this, okay? Cities do not like having homeless people in their city for reasons you can probably imagine. Out of sight, out of mind. So you buy them a bus ticket, you give them $20, and you send them somewhere else. And for a while, I lived where they sent them. Humboldt, California has a massive homeless population because that county receives, yes, the Greyhound treatment, receives a enormous influx of homeless people. There are homeless camps all over the place. And, it was rough for a lot of the homeless people because Humboldt is, well, it's not super cold, but it's chilly and it's wet. It's very, very wet. Rains pretty much every day in Humboldt. Always overcast. The Pacific Northwest. It's the Pacific Northwest. I'm talking redwoods. I'm talking banana slugs. I'm talking forests that stretch the whole state across, And bombweed, of course, naturally. And it is beautiful. And but humidity is not phenomenal if you do not have the comforts of a roof and walls around you. So the homeless people, they would make these camps, okay? And there was this one place, this Hyena, I'm going to need you to fill me in. You know the name of this place because you wanted to take me there. There's this one place. Is Hyena in chat? I don't even know if Hyena's in chat. It was called the Devil's something. The Devil's Playground. It was called the Devil's Playground. And it was a big old abandoned buildings, just a district that had been abandoned. And homeless people lived there, right? And these homeless people, okay, this place was a place of culture, okay? The homeless people get sent up to Humboldt. Homeless people got culture. They got lots of it to share, as a matter of fact. Culture generally comes from the impoverished, or those who were once impoverished. And that place, that Devil's Playground, that place was one of the best graffiti spots in all of California. So I'm told. Never went there, but I was told. It's a big, big, big facility. And we're not talking a crime issue. We're not talking gangs. I mean, they would sell weed there, of course, but we're not talking a dangerous place. Hyena went there with some friends before I went up to Humboldt, and there was just graffiti the whole way around. There are pictures you can look up. It's really nice. Devil's Playground is gone now. The police destroyed it. Not too impressive in the pictures, but there was this marshy area, I heard, that you had to, get across, this marshy, and there was more across, but there was a lot of stuff here, and it would get swapped out all the time too. A person would redo a piece over another piece and a piece over another piece, and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, the whole place got torn down. Having grown quite fond of the place over the last few years, Lost Coast Outpost, that's the local paper, wandered the debris this morning, taking photos and coming to grips with the change all around us. That's a local paper talking about this place. Damn, this was a cultural landmark. He seemed surprised at how quickly his crew had been able to dismantle the structures. Perhaps due to its age, the mill's concrete walls toppled easily. So it was a mill. Okay. Excuse me. Oh, don't worry. The city of Eureka, that's a nearby city, will use the resulting gravel as the foundation of an 8 to 10 foot wide paved trail that will soon pass through the marsh. Yeah, there's the marsh. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. I remember those stories. Eureka's most utilized concrete canvas is no more, After a week of work, the colorful graffiti-soaked ruins of the old Pacific Lumber Company mill behind the Bayshore Mall, decaying structures which for years now have carried the perhaps derisive label Devil's Playground, has been reduced to a patch of crumbly rubble. Now, this place was nice. I mean, they could have made this a historical site if they really wanted to. But we really don't treat homeless people too nice, you know? Really, 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 really don't. And the reality is that there's no reason to it. Actually, no, there's one reason. The reason why society hates homeless people is because we feel guilty about it. That's the reason why. Guilt is a very unproductive emotion because it leads to deterrence rather than acceptance. That's the reason why. People don't like looking at homeless people. I don't like looking at homeless people. And it's not because I hate them. It's not because I'm scared of them. It's because it reminds me. It's a permanent reminder of two things. One, that I'm lucky. And two, that the wrong turn of events, and I could be there. But the biggest one of all is just, why do I get to succeed and they don't? Why do I get to sleep under a roof and they don't? It's guilt. That's the number one thing. But guilt is a terrible, terrible emotion, and it produces nothing. No productivity. If you all feel guilty about that, don't. The guilt is what keeps people from acting on it. Guilt makes you push those thoughts away to the back of your mind. Guilt is what leads you to look at them and then quickly avert your eyes so you don't make eye contact, okay? Guilt doesn't lead to any positive long-term things. Yeah, don't feel guilty. You can get mad, or you can be productive or inspired or something, but guilt does not incentivize productive responses to this behavior. And I think that if the people in our society in general were less guilty, they would be a little bit more curious. Because the first thought that your average Joe has when he sees a homeless person is, oh, don't look. You know, don't make eye contact. Because when you make eye contact, you might see how they feel and how they feel about you. And that's scary for a lot of people. But if you get rid of that first thought, you know, the second thought might be, why is that person sleeping under an overpass when there are X many empty houses in this city? You know, why do I live in a country that has a national budget that's measured in the trillions and we still have homeless people? You know, why exactly? But of course, that curiosity leads to political action, so we don't want to do that. Homeless people are also a massive cost to the state, since they often go out of hospital and prison. Yeah. Well, I didn't want to talk economics because it makes me sound like a lib. But yeah, factually speaking, we all benefit from as many people as possible being productive citizens. If you have a person who's in prison or homeless or anything else where the state has to intermittently take care of them, you have a person who goes in or out of the system, this costs a lot of money. A lot of money. It's like preventative care versus treatment, you know? Preventative care is cheap. Sometimes it's free. Treatment can be very expensive. Life-ruiningly expensive sometimes. So, you know, the preventative treatment in this case is to get rid of the economic systems which are keeping people homeless. Oh yeah, and there are other reasons why they would want to keep homeless people around, you know, conceptually. The existence of homeless people, it does keep people in line. It keeps people fearful that they might be next. There are many people in America on the brink of homelessness. We still are dealing with a rent crisis in this country. There are still people who are in debt to their landlords for months and months down the line. And the existence of a homeless people is a fun reminder that at any point in time, you could be the next one. And that little corner that every time you get off the freeway and you get off the exit and you turn into your neighborhood, that corner where you see the homeless guy, that can be you next. You can stand out there for 11 hours a day panhandling, okay? Better keep working. Very effective deterrent, that. Additionally, the existence of homeless people perpetually justifies the existence of police. Because homeless people are simultaneously the most victimized and the most reviled element of our city workings. Nobody gets robbed as much as homeless people. Trust me. Okay? Nobody even comes close. All right? How could they not? They don't have a house. The security systems on tents, if they have them, are rather lax. Um, and So you have police around. Police don't really solve homeless people's problems. They just sort of exist around homeless people. And crimes between homeless people are rarely used as an excuse for the police to resolve those problems or arrest the wrongdoer. They're used as a general attack against homeless people. Actually, that's something they do to the black community too. You know how racists will use not interracial, like black on black crime, not as a way of saying, hey, we need to investigate which gang did this shooting, or we need to investigate who did this murder. Instead, they use it to broadly dismiss all black people. They do the same thing with homeless people. When homeless people prey on other homeless people, when there's violence between them, and that does happen, rather than police going, okay, we will find the violent homeless person, instead it's just a broad cultural condemnation of all homeless people, you know? Oh, they're fighting again. It's like the socioeconomic equivalent of getting picked on by your older brother, and then when your parent comes in, your parent punishes both of you because they don't even want to deal with it. Now, that's one thing with a parent and kids. It's not great there either, but when we're talking police and courts, that's an entirely different problem, a much more severe one. I'm just rambling. I'm just rambling here. I don't really have a point, you know? Oh, also, not to mention all the medical resources that homeless people use up, okay? Now, my weak, flabby, antibiotic in bolstered body, I live day to day because I live in walls and a roof. Put me outside for 24 hours and I'll probably get a cold. Put me outside for 24 days and I'll probably be dead. I watch Naked and Afraid. I do not live it. But homeless people are subjected constantly to injury, again, we have drug problems, we have exposure, we have the million things that can afflict their bodies. And that takes up a lot of hospital space and time. Somebody posted about that earlier, right? Somebody did. Somebody said, I'm an EMS. I'm a paramedic, you know? It's true. Yeah. You got a homeless guy who's got medical problem X or Y. They don't have any money to pay into the system, of course, but they still get medical treatment. So they just get run in there to the ER, problem kind of maybe fixed, then dumped on out there, and then see you again in a month. Hey. It's just bad all around. If there's any message to be had here, it's that A, do not feel guilt about homeless people, okay? Unless you personally made somebody homeless, don't feel guilty about that, okay? Do not. And people will say, you don't feel guilty, you're heartless. No, guilt is not what people feel when they're not heartless. Heartless people feel guilt all the time. What heartless people don't feel is empathy. But guilt and empathy are not the same thing, okay? They're not even close to the same thing. One of them is productive. The other one is definitely not. I'll work on that. If there's anything to be done, I talk shit about mutual aid like LARPers online sometimes because people will be like, don't go vote for Biden. You should do mutual aid. But they never first of all, they've never done anything in their life. And second of all, they don't know what that means. And third of all, they're annoying and fuck them. But if there's any element where I think that a relentless and persistent advocacy for mutual aid is very justified, like pointedly justified, it would definitely be in assisting the homeless. 100%. You know what homeless people really need? This is what they need, okay? More than anything else. They need, this is first step, by the way. What they really, really need is a house. But before we can get them that, they need a Saul Goodman, okay? Very, very dedicated lawyers will, from time to time, make it their business to be an advocate for the houseless in a given part of their city, their state, and a sufficiently dedicated lawyer can do an ungodly amount of good, by the way. Sometimes all it takes is a lawyer talking to a police officer to change their behavior, okay? Sometimes that's legitimately all it takes. Lawyers have a lot of power, and police don't fuck with them as much because lawyers are way more familiar with the legal processes by which they could hurt those police officers. They know the judges, et cetera, et cetera. Bosh, we get it. You watch the show. I can tell you people are mad. I make references all the time. You're mad about this one because you've also watched this one and you want to show how much cooler you are than everyone else because you did watch the show. You're lamer than I am, okay? Dude, I've got a cringe cup. You're drinking from a bucket, all right? Saul Goodman, but maybe with less of a criminal element, ideally, unless you want to get shipped off to Omaha, Nebraska, at the end of the series. That kind of stuff. They need people in their court. What homeless people need, they need representatives, okay? Because I'll tell you this much, all right? Police, judges, social service workers, everyone with any kind of power, they're not going to listen to somebody showing up wearing 3 dirty windbreakers who hasn't washed their hair in a month, okay? Sorry. Seriously, I'm sorry, but they're not. You show up in a suit, you show up with a group of friends, you're familiar with your local bylaws and statutes, and you have a working relationship with people who have some power, you can do a lot of good. So maybe if you're in an area where that sort of thing should be necessary, maybe look into that. Probably a few lawyers in chat, but you don't even have to be a lawyer. You can just be a cool guy, you know? I did this once. I don't go outside too often. Really more of an ideas guy. But when I was in Humboldt, before I had this channel, I mean years ago, Vosh, what the fuck? What's wrong with Omaha? Nothing. Saul Goodman got shipped out to Omaha at the end of the spoilers. Anyway, when I was back in Humboldt, there were organizations I would occasionally work with, and at one point we went to a town hall meeting where the speaker was the chief of police in the city of Eureka. So, chief of police, I mean, nice getting to talk to somebody with some actual power in there. And that meeting was conveniently scheduled at the same time that the police were breaking up a homeless encampment. They scheduled the meeting at that time because they knew that it would draw press away from the homeless camp being broken up to the meeting, which is smart. It's a small county. There are only so many journalists, you know. You bring them over there, and then they're not taking pictures and videos of homeless people being harassed. Because, you know, breaking down an encampment doesn't just mean you, like, throw away tents. I mean, you're kicking homeless people around. You're breaking shit. It's a messy, messy process. Anyway, we went to the town hall meeting, and I confronted the police chief to the town hall audience, and I was scared shitless. I mean, scared shitless. I think my knees were quaking because we had a big town hall, you know, and I was right up there in the front row, and he was taking questions. Now, little did we know when we got there, the questions that he was taking, they were screened by a secretary. We wrote them down on cards, pass them up, and of course, you know what my question was about. The fuck you think you're doing, chief? That one didn't get put through. So those ones got screened by the secretary. You know what the secretary took? 5 questions, all of them basically cocksucking. Is basically the gist of it, you know. What are you doing to ensure the protection of Eureka citizens? You know, it's all like pre-screen stuff. For all we know, she could have just written those ones herself and thrown them in there, or the cop could have just been reading whatever he wanted from the card. I mean, that system does not exactly scream accountability. So those questions were read, and then after that, the thing was about to wrap up, and that's when I stood up. And oh boy, my knees were shaking. I mean, there were a couple hundred people or whatever, and it was not the time for me to talk, too. And it's the police chief. I mean, it's not a school classroom, you know, and I don't think the mayor was there, but the mayor's secretary was there in the anyway, I was terrified. But I said something, and it was too long, way too long. They let me speak though. Nobody arrested me. But I went on about how this meeting was only being held as a distraction, and how can you possibly talk about protecting the city when you're breaking up encampments for people who live here, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, I got a non-answer. I mean, it's not a TV show. It's not like the whole audience stood up and clapped afterwards. You know, it was basically I choked the question out, and then the police chief was like, you know, we're not at liberty to say, that kind of thing. But afterwards, I talked with the chief along with some of the buddies that I had over there, and he acted like it was a TV show. when we were talking in private, he was doing the whole, you're a very resourceful young man, and I think you might have a future if you continue to involve yourself in these, basically like the shut up, but I won't tell you to shut up kind of thing. The air was sinister. Did anyone film this? Fuck, I hope not. Jesus Christ, I'm so much better at public speaking now than I was then. But anyway, that happened. That was cool. It's coffee, and I just like holding it. Okay. How long ago was this? 4 years, maybe 3, 4. I don't know. Some length of time. But the point that I'm getting at is that I was scared, but I did it anyway. If you show up to town halls, if you show up at your local police station and demand to speak to somebody, not just the person at the front desk, but somebody, if you go to your local courthouse, if you can get a second with the DA, or even, God willing, with a judge, which sometimes is possible, you can learn a lot, and you can use that power very effectively. Because often these people act unchecked. Police officers and the DA, they just sort of do whatever, they just sort of have fun with it. And they know nobody's going to call them out in it. Certainly not the homeless people, who probably don't have the time, resources, or social capital necessary to actually challenge them on those points. Okay, we're rambling. Okay.